Have you ever wondered why meeting your twin flame feels like walking into a story you didn't know you were already part of? One moment you feel an overwhelming sense of recognition, as if you've known this person across lifetimes. The next moment, a wave of fear, insecurity, abandonment, or rejection crashes into you with a force that feels almost supernatural. It is as if your heart suddenly remembers every wound it has ever carried, yet you cannot fully explain why. Many people describe the twin flame connection as the most beautiful and the most painful experience of their lives. Not because the connection itself is toxic, but because it rips open a part of you that you didn't even realize was still bleeding. And the moment these wounds are activated, it feels like the universe has decided to use your twin flame as the mirror you can't escape from. But what if the pain isn't coming from them at all? What if this person is simply reflecting something you've spent your entire life avoiding? What if the intensity of the connection is not a sign of destruction, but a sign of awakening? Almost everyone who meets their twin flame eventually finds themselves asking the same bewildering question: why does it hurt so much? And beneath that question lies another, deeper one. Why does this person have the power to trigger emotions that I didn't even know existed? Maybe you've tried to rationalize it. Maybe you've told yourself that you're being dramatic. Maybe you've wondered if you are obsessed, traumatized, or operating from a place of desperation. But there is a truth that many people are never told at the beginning of their twin flame journey. The connection is not here to break you. It is here to reveal you. Imagine your soul as a mirror covered in dust, layers and layers that have accumulated from childhood, past relationships, heartbreaks, family patterns, or even past life memories. Over time, you stopped noticing the dust. You lived with it. You adjusted your expectations to it. You built an identity around it. Then one day your twin flame walks in. And without warning, without even trying, they wipe the mirror clean. Suddenly, all the dust you pretended wasn't there becomes painfully visible. The reflection staring back at you is raw, unfiltered, vulnerable. Your true self before the world told you who you should be. Twin flames don't simply love you. They expose you. Unlike soulmate connections that comfort and stabilize you, the twin flame connection disrupts you. It shakes your foundation at the core. Not to destroy you, but to force you to confront the emotional architecture you built out of fear, wounds, and past survival mechanisms. And here's the part that feels the most confusing. The person who triggers this intensity feels like the safest soul you've ever met. Yet they also feel like the most dangerous. The contradiction is overwhelming. You might feel abandoned by them, but the fear of abandonment was already inside you long before they arrived. You might feel rejected by them, but the belief that you weren't enough was planted inside you long before you heard their voice. You might feel unworthy of their love, but that sense of unworthiness existed within you long before this connection ignited. The twin flame doesn't create the wound. They illuminate it. Think of it like this. Imagine you've been walking with a thorn in your heart for years. You learn to live with it. You learn to work around it. You learn to pretend you didn't feel it. And then your twin flame comes along, not to hurt you but to press gently, precisely, unavoidably on the exact spot where the thorn lies. Not to cause pain but to show you where it is so you can finally remove it. If you've ever asked, why does this hurt so much? The answer is simple yet profound. Because you are finally feeling what you were never allowed to feel. The twin flame connection brings buried pain to the surface in a way no other relationship can. It resurrects wounds you've hidden even from yourself. The terror of being abandoned, the ache of being unworthy, the fear of being unseen, the trauma of being rejected. And the irony is that this emotional earthquake tends to happen not when things go wrong in the connection, but right when things feel the most real. Right when you get close. Right when vulnerability begins. Right when love starts to deepen. Because closeness threatens the walls you built for protection. Intimacy threatens the stories you told yourself to survive. Love threatens the illusion that you don't deserve it. And this is why so many twin flame connections experience the runner-chaser dynamic. The moment the mirror becomes too clear, too honest, too exposing, one or both souls instinctively pull away, not because they don't care, but because the reflection is too overwhelming to handle all at once. The truth is, it is never the love that hurts. It is the wound that the love reveals. And yet, the paradox of the twin flame connection is that even when the pain feels unbearable, you cannot stay away. Something keeps pulling you back, not necessarily to the person but to the lesson, to the healing, to the integration, to the version of yourself that you know exists on the other side of fear. Have you ever noticed that the pain becomes stronger when you try to run from it? That the silence feels louder when you try to ignore it? That the distance feels heavier when you try to detach from it? This is because you are not running from your twin flame. You are running from your own soul. And your soul is tired of running. The reason the twin flame connection feels like both heaven and hell is because it is asking you to become whole, to face what you abandoned, to embrace what you rejected, to reclaim what you lost, to meet yourself in your darkest places and remember your own light. In this journey, your twin flame is not the enemy, nor are they the savior. They are the mirror. A mirror that shows you the truth you were not taught to see. A mirror that reveals the wound you were never encouraged to heal. A mirror that reflects the love you forgot how to give yourself. And so the real question is not, why does my twin flame hurt me so much? The real question is, what part of me is asking to be healed through this connection? Because the moment you begin to explore that question, you step out of the pain and into purpose. You stop seeing the connection as punishment and start seeing it as initiation. You stop asking why you met this person and start understanding why your soul needed them. This is the beginning of your journey into the mirror wound. The core wound your twin flame is here to reveal, not to torment you, but to liberate you. If you truly want to understand the workings of the twin flame connection, you must first understand its most paradoxical element, the mirror wound. Because beneath the intensity, beneath the magnetic pull, beneath the longing and the chaos, there lies a truth so profound, so subtle, that most people overlook it entirely. The twin flame is not just a person. The twin flame is a mirror. One polished to such clarity that it reflects not only your beauty, but also your shadows. To grasp the essence of the mirror wound, imagine standing before a mirror that does not reflect your physical face, but your emotional and spiritual landscape. This mirror does not lie. It does not soften the edges of your fears or smooth over the wrinkles of your past. It shows everything. Your hidden pain, your suppressed desires, your forgotten dreams, your unhealed memories. In this reflection, nothing is distorted, nothing is filtered, nothing is ignored. The mirror wound is not the wound inflicted by the twin flame. It is the wound revealed by the twin flame. Many people misunderstand this distinction and assume their twin flame is the cause of their suffering. They tell themselves, if only he hadn't left, or if only she hadn't rejected me, or if only they acted differently, I wouldn't feel this pain. But the deeper truth is that the twin flame does not create the emotional reaction. They expose the emotional imprint already inside you. This exposure is what makes the connection simultaneously irresistible and terrifying. You are drawn to the mirror because your soul recognizes itself in the reflection. Yet you fear the mirror because your ego recognizes everything it has tried to bury. To really understand the mirror wound, you must step out of the narrative that someone is doing something to you. You must ask a different question, a much harder one. What is this experience trying to show me about myself? Because every time your twin flame triggers you, every time they pull away, every time they get close, every time they speak their truth, every time they choose themselves, your reaction says more about your own inner world than about their behavior. This does not mean the twin flame is always right. It does not mean you are imagining things. It means your emotional reaction is a doorway into your subconscious. Let's take a scenario. Imagine you feel abandoned when your twin flame becomes distant. The pain feels unbearable, raw, even physical. You may think, this hurts because they left. But what if the truth is that the pain is not about their departure at all? What if the pain is echoing a much older wound? Perhaps a moment in childhood when a parent turned away at a time you needed closeness. Or a memory from adolescence when someone you loved chose someone else over you. Or a relationship in adulthood where you learned to silence your needs just to avoid being left behind. When your twin flame pulls away, the mirror shows you every moment you were ever abandoned. When your twin flame rejects you, the mirror shows you every moment you felt unworthy. When your twin flame triggers jealousy, the mirror shows you every moment you feared losing love. When your twin flame expresses anger, the mirror shows you every moment you were conditioned to fear conflict. The mirror wound reveals the core of the hurt that you carry in your energy body, not just your mind. It is stored in your nervous system, your emotions, your cellular memory. And this is why the twin flame connection feels so intense. Because the mirror is not reflecting your current self. It is reflecting your unhealed self. You may ask, why would my twin flame reflect this? Why not something easier, softer, gentler? The answer is rooted in the origin of the twin flame connection. Its purpose is not comfort. Its purpose is transformation. Soulmates comfort you. Twin flames awaken you. And awakening is rarely gentle. To awaken is to be confronted with everything you have ignored. It is to stand before a mirror and finally acknowledge the truth you were never emotionally ready to face. It is to stop running from the parts of yourself that you deemed unlovable. This is why the mirror wound is so central to the twin flame journey. Because the connection is designed to illuminate every crack in your foundation. Not to shame you, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you into the person you were meant to become. One of the most powerful aspects of the mirror wound is how subtle it can be. It doesn't always show up in dramatic arguments or heartbreak. Sometimes it appears in the quietest, most unexpected moments. Maybe your twin flame looks at you with a depth you are not used to, and suddenly you feel exposed, unprepared, vulnerable. You may not understand why a simple gaze triggers you so deeply, but the mirror knows. It is reflecting the part of you that has always feared being truly seen. Maybe your twin flame encourages your growth, pushes you to step into your purpose, challenges your limitations. And instead of feeling inspired, you feel pressure, fear, resistance. Why? Because the mirror is showing you the version of yourself you are afraid to embrace. Maybe your twin flame expresses love in a way you're not familiar with. And instead of receiving it, you feel doubt, confusion, discomfort. Why? Because the mirror is reflecting the part of you that does not believe you deserve love. The mirror wound reveals itself not only in pain, but in the ways you block intimacy, avoid vulnerability, reject softness, sabotage connection, or retreat into the familiar patterns that once kept you safe. When the mirror appears, most people react in one of two ways. They either cling to the twin flame to avoid facing the wound, or they run from the twin flame to avoid feeling the wound. But the real invitation is neither clinging nor running. The real invitation is sitting with the reflection. The mirror wound asks you to look at yourself with radical honesty. It asks you to acknowledge where the pain comes from. It asks you to take responsibility for your healing. Not because the twin flame demands it, but because your soul demands it. Imagine the courage it takes to look into someone's eyes and see every version of yourself. The wounded child, the abandoned lover, the betrayed friend, the lonely dreamer, the silenced voice. But also the strong one, the wise one, the intuitive one, the one who is learning, growing, transforming. The mirror wound does not only show you what is broken, it also shows you what is possible. Because every wound reflected in the twin flame connection has a counterpart, a healed version waiting on the other side. The wound of abandonment evolves into emotional independence. The wound of rejection transforms into self-acceptance. The wound of unworthiness becomes self-love. The wound of fear becomes spiritual courage. The wound of scarcity becomes inner abundance. Your twin flame does not reflect your pain to punish you. They reflect your pain to guide you. They show you the wound so you can find the medicine. Without the mirror, you would continue living out the same emotional patterns unconsciously. You would repeat the same relationships. You would recreate the same heartbreaks. You would perpetuate the same cycles. But with the mirror, you finally see the pattern clearly, and you are given the choice to break it. This is why the mirror wound is sacred. It is a doorway into awakening. It is a confrontation with truth. It is the moment your soul says, "You can heal now. You don't have to carry this anymore." The twin flame simply holds the mirror. You are the one who steps into the reflection. If you are willing to do that, if you are willing to look, to feel, to heal, then the mirror wound becomes not a source of suffering, but a catalyst for the most profound transformation of your life. And that is the real purpose of this connection. Not romance, not possession, not happily ever after in the traditional sense, but the awakening of a soul into its highest truth. Every human being carries within them a set of emotional imprints, deep, often invisible scars that were formed long before adulthood. These scars shape our beliefs, our fears, our behaviors, and even the way we perceive love. In the twin flame journey, these deep-seated emotional imprints are what we call the core wound. And it is the core wound that the mirror wound exposes. The core wound is not simply a minor hurt or a temporary emotional pain. It is the original fracture in the soul, often dating back to early childhood or even past lifetimes, that left an imprint on your sense of self, your worthiness, and your ability to receive love. It is a wound that quietly influences your choices, your relationships, and your emotional patterns, sometimes in ways you do not consciously recognize. These wounds come in many forms. Perhaps the most common is the wound of abandonment. This may have originated when a parent, caregiver, or significant person in your early life was emotionally unavailable, absent, or inconsistent. Even subtle forms of abandonment, such as a parent being physically present but emotionally distant, can leave a lasting imprint. You learn, often unconsciously, that love is conditional, that it can vanish without warning, and that safety is fragile. Another prevalent form of core wound is the wound of rejection. This arises when the young self is repeatedly dismissed, criticized, or invalidated. Perhaps a talent was belittled, an opinion ignored, or a need overlooked. Over time, the mind internalizes the belief, "I am not good enough. I am not worthy of love or recognition." This internalized narrative becomes the lens through which the individual views relationships and life experiences. There is also the wound of inadequacy, often intertwined with the previous two. People carrying this core wound constantly measure themselves against unrealistic standards, always fearing they fall short. They seek external validation to compensate for the void inside. Yet no approval feels sufficient. This pattern becomes a magnet in the twin flame connection because the twin flame reflects this exact fear, creating circumstances that force the individual to confront it. The core wound is rarely singular. Many of us carry a complex tapestry of wounds. Fear of abandonment mixed with rejection, inadequacy entwined with shame, loneliness blended with insecurity. These wounds are layered, and they often interact in intricate ways, shaping emotional responses that feel automatic, involuntary, or even inexplicable. This is precisely why the twin flame connection is so disorienting and intense. Unlike ordinary relationships, which may activate superficial fears or insecurities, the twin flame connection bypasses these defenses and goes straight to the heart of the core wound. The mirror wound is the mechanism by which this activation occurs. It magnifies the emotional patterns that have lain dormant, making them impossible to ignore. Imagine a scenario. You meet your twin flame and immediately feel a magnetic pull. There is an undeniable sense of familiarity, as if you have known this person forever. At first, it feels comforting and exhilarating. Yet, almost immediately, situations arise that trigger fear, jealousy, insecurity, or anger, emotions you thought were long buried. Why do these feelings surface so quickly and so intensely? The answer lies in the core wound. When the twin flame reflects your deepest fears, it is not a reflection of their flaws, but a reflection of your unresolved pain. Your emotional responses are amplified because the situation resonates with a part of your soul that has never healed. Take, for example, the wound of abandonment. If your core wound is rooted in early experiences of being left alone, whether through physical absence, emotional neglect, or perceived rejection, any form of distance from your twin flame will trigger an intense emotional reaction. Even a brief period of separation may provoke feelings of panic, anxiety, or desperation, far exceeding the actual circumstances. The twin flame acts as a mirror, showing the exact place where the wound still exists. Similarly, if your core wound involves rejection or inadequacy, the connection may trigger fears of being insufficient, of not being loved completely, or of losing the other person to someone better. Every choice your twin flame makes, every boundary they establish, every expression of autonomy, may feel like confirmation of your old fears. You are not reacting to them as a person. You are reacting to the echoes of the past stored within you. This is why the twin flame connection can feel so contradictory. You experience moments of intense joy, profound recognition, and euphoric love. Yet alongside these moments, there is often deep suffering, confusion, or a sense of being emotionally unmoored. The joy is the reflection of your soul's longing for wholeness. The suffering is the reflection of the core wound demanding attention. One of the most important aspects to understand is that the core wound is not something you can fix by external means. No amount of love, attention, or approval from your twin flame, or anyone else, can heal the wound. It exists within your own consciousness, waiting for acknowledgement and integration. The twin flame serves as a catalyst, not a healer. They illuminate the wound so that you can see it clearly, but the work of healing must be undertaken by you. To illustrate, let's explore 3 archetypal core wounds that the twin flame connection often activates. 1. The abandonment wound, triggered by perceived distance, silence, or withdrawal. Emotions include panic, fear, anxiety, and obsessive thoughts. Healing requires cultivating inner security, self-soothing practices, and recognizing that love is not dependent on constant presence. 2. The rejection wound, triggered by perceived criticism, differing opinions, or misaligned values. Emotions include shame, inadequacy, anger, and self-doubt. Healing involves self-validation, conscious reframing of limiting beliefs, and developing unconditional self-acceptance. 3. The unworthiness wound, triggered by moments of comparison, jealousy, or perceived favoritism. Emotions include envy, fear of loss, insecurity, and self-sabotage. Healing requires cultivating self-love, practicing gratitude, and acknowledging intrinsic worth independent of external circumstances. What is striking about the twin flame journey is how it brings all 3, sometimes multiple times over, in cycles that seem endless. One day you may feel euphoric closeness, the next despair and panic. One day you feel appreciated and seen, the next invisible and rejected. This cycle repeats until the core wound is no longer unconscious. The universe, through the twin flame connection, will keep reflecting the wound until you are ready to confront it consciously. The core wound also explains why the twin flame connection can feel so magnetic and addictive. You are not drawn merely to the person. You are drawn to the healing potential they reflect. Your soul recognizes an opportunity for integration, growth, and reclamation. The intensity of the connection is proportional to the depth of the wound. It is the universe's way of ensuring that you cannot ignore the parts of yourself that have been left unresolved. Another critical point is that the core wound often manifests through projection. You may attribute feelings of inadequacy, fear, or abandonment to your twin flame, thinking they are the source of your suffering. Yet projection is merely a coping mechanism. The emotional intensity is your soul's way of demanding recognition, not a condemnation of the other person. Recognizing this allows you to step out of blame and begin the process of self-awareness and conscious healing. Ultimately, understanding the core wound is about reclaiming your power. It is about seeing that your twin flame is not the cause of your pain, but the mirror through which you can finally recognize and transform it. The journey is not about controlling the other person, changing the relationship, or earning their love. It is about looking into the mirror they hold up and saying, "I see you and I see myself, and I am ready to heal." When you begin to understand the core wound, the intensity of the twin flame connection transforms from overwhelming and confusing into sacred and purposeful. You begin to perceive the patterns, the triggers, and the messages. You start to recognize that every emotional reaction is an invitation to explore, to learn, and to integrate. You start to see the twin flame not as a source of chaos, but as a teacher, a guide, and ultimately, a mirror reflecting your own path to wholeness. In the next section, we will explore how the twin flame connection acts as the activator of these core wounds, the mechanism through which the mirror wound emerges, and why the process, although painful, is essential for your spiritual evolution. If Part 3 helped you understand what the core wound is, then Part 4 will take you even deeper into the heart of the twin flame journey, how your twin flame activates that core wound. This is where the mysterious intensity of the connection transforms from confusing and painful to enlightening and purposeful. Understanding this mechanism is essential if you want to navigate your twin flame connection consciously, without being swept away by unconscious reactions or emotional storms. The twin flame connection is unlike any other relationship. Ordinary relationships may trigger minor insecurities or temporary emotional discomfort, but the twin flame connection goes directly to the origin of the pain. Why? Because the twin flame is not just a lover or a friend. They are a mirror of your soul, designed to show you exactly where your unhealed wounds are. When the core wound has existed for years, even decades, it has become a hidden force shaping your thoughts, reactions, and choices. You may not even be aware of it consciously, but your subconscious mind, your emotional body, and your soul energy remember everything. The twin flame acts as a catalyst that brings these hidden imprints to the surface, magnifying their impact, making them impossible to ignore, and giving you the opportunity to heal at the deepest level. 1. The mirror effect. Emotional reflection. One of the primary ways the twin flame activates the core wound is through emotional mirroring. Imagine your core wound as a hidden crack in the foundation of a house. The house may look strong on the outside, but the crack is there, weakening the structure. When your twin flame enters your life, their energy interacts with yours, and suddenly the crack becomes visible. For instance, if your core wound is abandonment, your twin flame may unintentionally display behaviors that echo that past pain. They may withdraw, create distance, or need space at moments when you feel most attached. To someone outside of the twin flame dynamic, these actions may appear ordinary. Yet for you, they are magnified through the lens of the core wound, triggering an intense emotional response. Similarly, if your core wound is rejection, their constructive criticism, boundary setting, or independent choices may feel like a personal rejection, even if it has nothing to do with you. The twin flame becomes a mirror, showing the unresolved emotional imprint that is still influencing your life. This mirroring is not accidental. The twin flame's energy resonates with your core wound, intentionally or not, because the soul connection operates on a level beyond the mind. This resonance ensures that the core wound cannot remain hidden. It is brought into the light, often through experiences that are confusing, challenging, or emotionally intense. 2. Triggering through contrast. Another key mechanism through which the twin flame activates your core wound is contrast. Your twin flame is often a reflection of both the best and the most challenging aspects of yourself. They embody qualities you deeply admire, desire, or long to integrate, but they also embody aspects that challenge your sense of security, self-worth, or control. For example, if your core wound is unworthiness, you may notice your twin flame achieving success, recognition, or independence in ways that trigger envy or feelings of inadequacy. This contrast is not meant to punish you. It is a mirror showing you the areas where your perception of self-worth is limited. The pain arises from the internal comparison, not from the twin flame's actions. Likewise, if your core wound is fear of abandonment, seeing your twin flame assert boundaries, spend time apart, or engage in activities independently may feel like emotional rejection. The contrast between your deep desire for closeness and the reality of their individuality activates the wound, revealing the unresolved fear that you carry within you. 3. The push-pull dynamic. Perhaps the most iconic manifestation of the mirror wound is the runner-chaser or push-pull dynamic. This is when one twin flame retreats, the runner, and the other pursues, the chaser, sometimes repeatedly. While this dynamic can be emotionally excruciating, it is not evidence of incompatibility or a failed connection. It is a mechanism through which the core wound is illuminated. The runner behavior often triggers the abandonment or unworthiness wound in the chaser. The chaser's reaction, anxiety, fear, obsession, or desire to control, reflects the emotional imprint they carry. Conversely, the runner may be triggered by the intensity, dependency, or expectations of the chaser, reflecting their own core wounds of inadequacy or fear of engulfment. The cycle continues until both souls begin to recognize the pattern consciously. Once recognized, the push-pull dynamic can transform from a source of pain into a training ground for emotional mastery. The mirror wound, once understood, is no longer something that blinds you. It becomes a guide showing exactly where healing is needed. 4. Activation through vulnerability. One of the most powerful ways the twin flame connection activates the core wound is through vulnerability. When you are with your twin flame, you often feel safe enough to drop your masks, to show your authentic self, or to express emotions you usually suppress. This vulnerability is precisely what awakens the core wound. For example, if your core wound is rejection, the act of expressing your true feelings, needs, or desires to your twin flame may make you feel exposed. Even small moments of disagreement, misunderstanding, or miscommunication can trigger intense emotional reactions because the wound is sensing the possibility of being invalidated or dismissed. Similarly, if your core wound is shame or inadequacy, moments of emotional honesty or intimacy can provoke anxiety or fear of not being loved fully. The twin flame acts as the mirror that reflects not only your deepest needs, but also your insecurities about being fully seen and fully accepted. 5. Physical and energetic activation. The mirror wound is not purely emotional or psychological. It is energetic and physical. Many twin flame experiences involve sensations in the body: sudden tension, heat, restlessness, headaches, stomach disturbances, or emotional flooding. These physical sensations often accompany the triggering of the core wound. Why? Because emotional trauma and core wounds are stored in the body. When the twin flame interaction activates these wounds, the energy trapped in the body is stirred, sometimes violently. The intensity may feel overwhelming, but it is a sign that deep healing is possible. The energy cannot be ignored. It demands attention, awareness, and conscious integration. 6. The role of unconscious beliefs. Another critical mechanism of activation is through unconscious beliefs. Your core wound often manifests as deeply ingrained narratives, such as, "I am unworthy of love. People always leave me. I must earn approval to be loved." When your twin flame acts in ways that challenge or contradict these beliefs, the mirror wound activates. The intensity comes not from external circumstances, but from the dissonance between the belief you carry and the reality being reflected back to you. The purpose is to bring the unconscious to the conscious, so you can begin the process of rewriting your internal story. 7. The catalyst for growth. Although the activation of the core wound can be painful, it is never accidental. The twin flame serves as a catalyst for your growth. They bring to the surface the exact wounds that require attention for your soul's evolution. Each trigger, each emotional upheaval, each moment of longing or fear is a doorway into deeper self-understanding. In other words, the mirror wound is not punishment. It is initiation. It is the soul saying, "You are ready to see. You are ready to heal. You are ready to reclaim the parts of yourself that have been hidden or denied." 8. Conscious awareness as the key. The activation of the core wound is inevitable in the twin flame connection, but the intensity and duration of the suffering depend on your level of awareness. The more consciously you observe your emotional reactions, the more you recognize projection, the more you understand that the trigger comes from within rather than from the other person, the more the mirror wound becomes a tool rather than a torment. Through journaling, meditation, self-inquiry, inner child work, or energy healing, you can begin to witness the mirror wound without being consumed by it. Awareness transforms the pain into insight, and insight transforms the insight into healing. 9. The gift behind the activation. Ultimately, the twin flame's activation of the core wound is a sacred gift. It is the universe's way of giving you an opportunity to heal at the deepest level. The person in front of you is not the cause of your pain. They are the reflection, the teacher, the mirror. By confronting the mirror wound, you do not just heal yourself. You also elevate the energy of the connection. The relationship, once chaotic and painful, can become a partnership of soul growth, spiritual awakening, and authentic love. The process of core wound activation is intense, confusing, and sometimes frightening, but it is also transformative, sacred, and essential for awakening. The twin flame does not bring suffering for the sake of suffering. They bring it to awaken, illuminate, and heal. Understanding this mechanism, the interplay between mirror wound, core wound, and twin flame energy, is the first step toward navigating the connection consciously and with grace. Understanding the theoretical framework of the mirror wound and the core wound is essential, but to truly grasp how the twin flame connection operates, it is helpful to see it in action. In this section, we will explore real-life examples of core wound activation, illustrating the intensity, complexity, and profound purpose behind these experiences. These examples are drawn from patterns commonly observed in twin flame journeys, emphasizing that while the specifics may vary, the underlying mechanisms are universal. 1. The abandonment wound. Consider a person whose core wound is rooted in abandonment. Perhaps in childhood, they experienced emotional neglect or the physical absence of a caregiver during crucial developmental years. The lesson they internalized consciously or unconsciously was, "I cannot rely on others. Love may vanish at any moment." Now imagine this individual meeting their twin flame. From the first encounter, they feel an almost magnetic pull, a sense of recognition that surpasses logic. However, when the twin flame begins to establish boundaries or pursue personal interests independently, The person experiences intense fear and panic. They may feel as if the connection is about to dissolve entirely, even if the twin flame's actions are perfectly ordinary. In this scenario, the mirror wound has activated the abandonment core wound. The emotional intensity is not caused by the twin flame's behavior, but by the unresolved pain stored in the person's emotional body. The fear of being left, the anxiety about losing love, and the desperate attempts to cling or control are all reflections of the old imprint. Over time, if the individual recognizes the pattern, the journey shifts. They begin to cultivate inner security, develop self-soothing practices, and embrace the understanding that love is not contingent upon constant presence. Through conscious awareness, the mirror wound transforms from a source of suffering into a catalyst for profound emotional independence. 2. The rejection wound. Another common manifestation involves the rejection core wound. A person with this wound may have experienced repeated invalidation, criticism, or neglect in formative years. They learn to believe that their voice, needs, or desires were unworthy of recognition or attention. In a twin flame connection, this individual may feel deeply threatened by moments of disagreement or constructive feedback. For instance, if their twin flame expresses an opinion that differs from theirs, or sets a boundary they do not understand, the person may feel rejected, unlovable, or inadequate. The emotional reaction is disproportionate to the actual event, because the mirror wound is amplifying the old, unresolved pain. This scenario often creates cycles of tension. The individual may oscillate between seeking approval and withdrawing in shame. Without conscious reflection, they may mistakenly believe the twin flame is intentionally causing pain. However, when they recognize that the triggering originates from the core wound, they can begin to respond consciously rather than react impulsively. Healing involves embracing self-validation, understanding that rejection in the present is not a reflection of worth, and gradually rewiring the internal narrative from unworthiness to self-acceptance. 3. The inadequacy wound. The inadequacy core wound manifests when a person consistently measures themselves against unrealistic standards or perceives themselves as falling short of expectations. Often, these individuals grew up in environments that prioritized achievement over emotional presence or conditioned them to earn love through performance. When such a person meets their twin flame, the intensity can be immediate. The twin flame's confidence, success, or unique qualities may provoke feelings of envy, self-doubt, or insecurity. The mirror wound is activated because the twin flame reflects what the person subconsciously fears they lack. The more deeply they admire or depend on the twin flame for validation, the more intense the activation becomes. This scenario often leads to self-sabotage or emotional withdrawal. The individual may push their twin flame away to avoid confronting the core wound or engage in behaviors designed to test the connection. Awareness is the key to transformation. Recognizing the pattern allows the individual to shift from comparison and self-criticism to self-compassion and internal validation. Over time, the mirror wound becomes a tool for cultivating inner confidence and reclaiming personal power. 4. Emotional triggers in daily life. Activation of the core wound does not only occur during dramatic or high-stakes moments. Often, it emerges subtly in daily interactions. For example, a simple disagreement over plans may provoke disproportionate anxiety if the abandonment wound is triggered. A compliment or constructive feedback from the twin flame may stir shame or unworthiness if the rejection wound is present. Observing the twin flame pursuing their personal goals may provoke envy or insecurity if inadequacy is the core wound. These moments demonstrate that the mirror wound is not always loud or obvious. Its activation can be quiet, persistent, and subtle, often disguised as everyday emotional reactions. Awareness requires tuning into these feelings, noticing patterns, and asking reflective questions. Why am I reacting this way? What is this reaction showing me about myself? 5. Projection and misinterpretation. One of the most challenging aspects of core wound activation is projection. Individuals often project their unresolved fears, insecurities, and unmet needs onto the twin flame, interpreting ordinary behaviors as intentional acts of harm. For example, a person with an abandonment core wound might interpret a twin flame's need for personal space as rejection. A person with a rejection core wound may perceive a neutral comment as criticism. These projections amplify the emotional intensity, creating cycles of misunderstanding and conflict. Recognizing projection is transformative. It shifts the perception from "they are doing this to me" to "this is an opportunity to see what I have yet to heal in myself." The mirror wound becomes a conscious tool for inner reflection, rather than a source of blame or resentment. 6 cycles of reunion and separation. Many twin flame connections follow patterns of reunion and separation, which repeatedly activate the core wound. These cycles often feel like emotional roller coasters. Reunion brings joy, recognition, and profound connection, but also triggers longing, fear, and unresolved pain. Separation intensifies the core wound, surfacing old fears of abandonment, rejection, or unworthiness. While these cycles can feel destabilizing, they are part of the healing process. Each cycle magnifies specific aspects of the core wound, providing opportunities for deeper self-awareness and integration. By observing these patterns consciously, the individual can learn to navigate the cycles with emotional intelligence, reducing reactivity and cultivating resilience. 7. Healing opportunities in real life. Every activation of the core wound presents a healing opportunity. For example, someone triggered by feelings of abandonment may explore self-soothing techniques, meditation, or inner child work to cultivate emotional security. Someone activated by feelings of rejection can practice self-compassion, affirmations, and boundary setting to reclaim self-worth. Someone facing inadequacy may engage in personal growth, celebrate achievements, and develop a supportive inner dialogue. By engaging with the mirror wound consciously, these real-life activations become powerful catalysts for transformation. What once felt like chaos and suffering evolves into clarity, empowerment, and spiritual awakening. 8. Shared growth and mutual healing. In many twin flame connections, core wounds are mutually activated. One twin flame's triggers can reflect the other's unresolved wounds, creating a dynamic in which both partners are given the opportunity to heal. For instance, one partner's abandonment wound may be activated by the other's need for space, while simultaneously, the other partner's fear of engulfment or inadequacy is reflected in the first partner's clinginess. Recognizing these mutual triggers can lead to conscious communication, emotional regulation, and empathy, transforming the relationship from a source of suffering into a shared path of spiritual growth. 9. The transformational gift. Ultimately, the mirror wound's activation in real life is a gift disguised as a challenge. It illuminates patterns, uncovers unconscious beliefs, and highlights areas requiring healing. The twin flame does not trigger these wounds to punish. They trigger them to awaken the individual to their unhealed core wounds and guide them toward conscious transformation. Through awareness, reflection, and intentional healing, what initially appears as emotional chaos becomes a structured journey toward wholeness. The relationship shifts from a cycle of pain to a platform for self-mastery, emotional intelligence, and profound spiritual awakening. 10. The invitation. The real-life examples of core wound activation serve as an invitation. They invite the individual to observe emotional reactions without judgment, recognize the source of the trigger within their own core wounds, practice conscious self-healing and self-love, transform emotional pain into insight and empowerment. Every emotional trigger, every cycle of separation and reunion, every moment of intense longing or fear is a doorway. The twin flame connection is not simply a romantic journey. It is a mirror for the soul, offering the opportunity to confront, understand, and heal the deepest wounds. By embracing these experiences consciously, the individual can transcend the limitations imposed by core wounds, reclaim their power, and awaken to a love that is not dependent on circumstance, but rooted in self-awareness, integration, and spiritual growth. Having explored the core wound, its activation by the twin flame, and real-life examples of how it manifests, we now move into one of the most crucial aspects of the twin flame journey: the healing process. Understanding the mirror wound without knowing how to integrate it keeps the soul trapped in cycles of emotional turbulence. True transformation occurs when the emotional triggers, reflections, and patterns are consciously addressed, processed, and ultimately integrated. Healing the mirror wound is not about changing your twin flame, controlling their behavior, or avoiding triggers. It is about cultivating self-awareness, emotional resilience, and energetic balance, allowing the wounds to surface, be acknowledged, and transmute into growth. In this section, we explore detailed steps to navigate this process effectively. 1. Recognize the activation. The first step in healing the mirror wound is recognition. Without conscious recognition, emotional reactivity dominates, and the individual remains trapped in cycles of suffering. Start by noticing moments when emotional intensity arises disproportionately. Ask yourself reflective questions. Why am I feeling this way right now? Is this reaction about the present moment? Or is it a reflection of an unresolved core wound? Am I projecting past pain onto my twin flame? Acknowledging that the intensity originates from within you, rather than being caused solely by external circumstances, is transformative. This awareness separates the mirror wound from the external reality, allowing you to engage with your emotional responses consciously rather than unconsciously reacting. 2. Observe without judgment. Once you recognize the mirror wound, the next step is observation without judgment. Emotional triggers often evoke shame, guilt, or self-criticism. Why am I so needy? Or why can't I handle this calmly? Are common narratives that perpetuate suffering. Instead, practice being a compassionate observer of your inner experience. View your emotional reactions as messages from your soul. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Which core wound is being reflected right now? Through this non-judgmental awareness, you create space for the mirror wound to be processed without adding layers of self-blame, allowing emotional energy to flow and release rather than stagnate. 3. Identify the core wound. After recognizing and observing your emotional reactions, identify which core wound is being activated. Is it abandonment, rejection, inadequacy, shame, or another deep-seated emotional imprint? Sometimes multiple wounds are activated simultaneously, forming complex patterns. Consider creating a reflective journal or chart to track triggers, emotional reactions, and the corresponding core wound. For example, trigger: twin flame spends time with friends without me. Emotional reaction: anxiety, fear of being unloved. Core wound: abandonment. Mapping these patterns provides clarity and structure, helping you understand not just what triggers your emotional responses, but why they occur at a soul-deep level. 4. Engage in inner child work. Most core wounds originate in early experiences, often from childhood. Therefore, inner child work is essential for healing. This involves connecting with the younger version of yourself who experienced the pain, validating their feelings, and offering the love and protection that may have been missing. Techniques include visualization exercises. Imagine comforting your younger self, holding them, and speaking words of reassurance. Dialogue. Write letters to or from your inner child, expressing needs, fears, and love. Reparenting. Integrate nurturing, protective behaviors into your current life, meeting your own needs consciously. By addressing the inner child, the mirror wound begins to dissolve because the original source of pain receives recognition, empathy, and healing. 5. Practice emotional release. The mirror wound is often accompanied by intense emotions stored in the body. Fear, anger, sadness, and grief may arise suddenly, sometimes with physical sensations like tension, restlessness, or tightness. Holding these emotions in can exacerbate suffering and reinforce the core wound. Emotional release practices include breathwork, deep, conscious breathing to move energy through the body; journaling, expressing feelings in writing without censoring or judging; movement, dancing, stretching, or shaking out tension; crying or vocal release, allowing natural emotional expressions to flow freely. The goal is to release trapped energy rather than suppress it. Each release reduces the intensity of the mirror wound and helps integrate the core wound more fully. 6. Cultivate self-love and self-validation. One of the most transformative steps in healing the mirror wound is the development of self-love and self-validation. Many core wounds involve beliefs that one is unworthy, not enough, or undeserving of love. Healing occurs when these beliefs are challenged and replaced with conscious affirmation of worth. Practical ways to cultivate self-love include daily affirmations: I am worthy of love. I am whole. I am enough. Recognizing achievements and personal growth, no matter how small. Treating yourself with the same kindness, patience, and compassion you would offer a loved one. Self-love is the antidote to the mirror wound. It empowers you to engage with your twin flame connection from a place of wholeness rather than neediness, reducing reactivity and fostering conscious, harmonious interaction. 7. Practice mindfulness and presence. Mindfulness is crucial in observing the mirror wound without being consumed by it. By anchoring yourself in the present moment, you can recognize emotional triggers as they arise and respond consciously rather than unconsciously. Mindfulness practices may include meditation, sitting quietly, observing thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations without judgment. Grounding techniques, feeling your feet on the floor, noticing breath, or connecting with nature to anchor yourself in the here and now. Conscious observation, noticing your reactions, triggers, and thought patterns as they occur during interactions with your twin flame. Mindfulness transforms emotional turbulence into conscious awareness, providing the clarity needed for integration. 8. Set conscious boundaries. A mirror wound often exposes areas where boundaries were unclear or compromised. Healing requires conscious boundary setting, which protects your emotional and energetic integrity while allowing the twin flame connection to exist without dependency or codependency. Boundaries may involve clearly communicating needs and limits, taking space when emotions are intense to prevent reactive behavior, honoring both your individuality and your twin flame's autonomy. Healthy boundaries prevent the mirror wound from escalating into destructive patterns and allow for conscious, balanced interaction. 9. Transform patterns through reflection and integration. As you practice recognition, observation, inner child work, emotional release, self-love, mindfulness, and boundary setting, patterns begin to shift. Each activation of the mirror wound becomes an opportunity for conscious integration. Integration involves reflecting on lessons learned from triggers and emotional responses, rewriting old narratives. I am no longer defined by past abandonment. I am whole and capable of loving fully. Applying insights in daily life, creating new behavioral and emotional habits. Over time, the intensity of the mirror wound diminishes, and the core wound heals at a soul-deep level. The twin flame connection transforms from a trigger-based dynamic to a partnership of growth, awakening, and mutual support. 10. Embrace the journey as sacred. Finally, healing the mirror wound requires embracing the journey as sacred. The twin flame connection is not about escaping pain. It is about awakening to your deepest self, confronting and integrating your core wounds, and stepping into a higher version of yourself. Each emotional trigger, each cycle of separation and reunion, each moment of longing or fear is a sacred invitation to reclaim your power, to recognize your worth, to awaken to love that is unconditional, conscious, and deeply transformative. By viewing the mirror wound through this lens, you shift from seeing it as a source of suffering to recognizing it as a profound spiritual gift. The twin flame relationship, when approached consciously, becomes a path of self-realization, healing, and awakening. In summary, healing the mirror wound involves recognition, observation, inner child work, emotional release, self-love, mindfulness, conscious boundaries, reflection, integration, and embracing the sacred journey. These steps allow the core wound to surface safely, be processed, and ultimately integrated, transforming the twin flame connection from a mirror of pain into a mirror of wholeness. When you approach the mirror wound consciously, the twin flame connection becomes a portal for soul growth, spiritual awakening, and profound emotional mastery. Each trigger, once feared, becomes a doorway to deeper self-understanding and authentic love. By now, you have explored what the core wound is, how it is activated by the twin flame, real-life examples of its manifestation, and the steps to integrate and heal it. Part 7 focuses on how to recognize progress on this journey. Healing the mirror wound is not always linear or visible at first glance, but there are clear signs and shifts that indicate you are moving toward conscious integration, emotional mastery, and spiritual awakening. Understanding these signs is crucial because it helps you celebrate growth, maintain perspective, and stay committed during challenging periods. Twin flame journeys are intense, and recognizing progress prevents discouragement when triggers or cycles appear to repeat. 1. Emotional reactions become less intense. One of the most noticeable signs of healing is a reduction in emotional intensity. Early in the twin flame connection, the mirror wound can provoke extreme anxiety, fear, anger, jealousy, or sadness. Reactions often feel disproportionate to the situation because the core wound amplifies the perceived threat. As healing occurs, these reactions begin to soften. You may still experience triggers, but the emotional response is less overwhelming. For example, moments of separation no longer induce panic, but instead create a quiet longing or reflective space. Constructive criticism is received without feeling like personal rejection. Boundary setting by your twin flame triggers curiosity rather than fear. This shift indicates that the emotional energy tied to the core wound is being processed and released. You are no longer unconsciously reacting. Instead, you are consciously observing and responding. 2. Increased self-awareness. Healing the mirror wound is synonymous with cultivating self-awareness. You become more adept at recognizing when a reaction is being triggered by your core wound rather than by external circumstances. Indicators of growing self-awareness include identifying emotional triggers in real time rather than only in hindsight, noticing projection onto your twin flame, and taking responsibility for your inner experience. Understanding patterns in push-pull dynamics and emotional cycles without judgment. This awareness is a powerful marker of progress. It demonstrates that you are engaging with the mirror wound consciously, transforming the connection from chaotic to guided. 3. Emotional independence and self-validation. Another sign of healing is emotional independence. Early in the journey, the mirror wound may lead to dependency on your twin flame for validation, love, and security. Healing occurs when you can maintain emotional equilibrium without relying solely on the other person. Practical signs include feeling whole and content in your own presence, even during periods of separation, being able to offer love freely without needing constant reassurance, trusting your worth and value internally rather than seeking external approval. This shift reflects deep integration of self-love and self-validation, showing that the core wound is no longer dictating your emotional state. 4. Healthy boundaries and clear communication. The presence of healthy boundaries and conscious communication is another critical sign of healing. Early triggers often arise because boundaries are unclear or unmet, leading to cycles of emotional turbulence. Signs of progress include expressing needs calmly and assertively rather than through fear or manipulation, respecting your twin flame's individuality without perceiving independence as abandonment, responding to disagreements or misunderstandings with empathy and curiosity rather than reactivity. Healthy boundaries allow the mirror wound to surface safely, while creating a relational environment conducive to growth and intimacy. 5. Reduce projection and clarity in perception. Healing the mirror wound diminishes projection, enabling clearer perception of your twin flame's actions. Rather than interpreting neutral or ordinary behaviors through the lens of your core wound, you begin to see situations objectively. For example, you can recognize when your twin flame's need for personal space is healthy and not a reflection of your worthiness. Constructive feedback is understood as guidance or personal perspective, not rejection or criticism. Moments of emotional intensity are seen as opportunities for reflection rather than threats to the relationship. This clarity signifies that the mirror wound is no longer distorting perception, allowing the connection to evolve into conscious partnership. 6. Integration of past emotional patterns. Another indicator of progress is integration of past emotional patterns. Healing the mirror wound involves recognizing and processing long-standing emotional imprints. As integration occurs, past experiences of abandonment, rejection, or inadequacy are acknowledged without domination over present interactions. Old coping mechanisms, clinginess, withdrawal, jealousy, or self-sabotage lose their power. Emotional reactions become proportional to the present moment rather than being exaggerated by unresolved trauma. Integration reflects the soul-level processing of core wounds, demonstrating that your mirror wound is moving from activation to healing. 7. Deeper compassion and empathy. As the mirror wound heals, you often notice an increase in compassion and empathy, both for yourself and your twin flame. Emotional triggers become opportunities to practice understanding rather than judgment. Signs include responding to your own emotional pain with kindness rather than criticism, recognizing your twin flame's struggles and patterns without taking them personally, developing patience and curiosity in moments of tension or misunderstanding, Compassion and empathy reflect emotional maturity and the spiritual integration of the mirror wound. 8. Acceptance of the twin flame journey's cycles. Healing also manifests as acceptance of the twin flame journey's natural cycles, including reunion, separation, and the push-pull dynamic. Instead of resisting or fearing these patterns, you learn to flow with them consciously. Indicators of acceptance. Viewing periods of separation as opportunities for self-growth rather than punishment or loss. Embracing emotional intensity as a tool for reflection and transformation. Recognizing that challenges are not obstacles but essential elements of the healing process. Acceptance transforms the mirror wound from a source of suffering into a gateway for spiritual evolution. 9. Strengthened inner peace and resilience. As core wounds are healed, you begin to experience inner peace and emotional resilience. Triggers may still arise, but they are navigated with steadiness, perspective, and self-regulation. Signs of resilience include recovering quickly from emotional upheavals without lingering self-criticism, maintaining a sense of stability and grounding even during intense interactions, responding to challenges with calm reflection rather than reactive patterns. Inner peace is the ultimate indicator that the mirror wound is being consciously integrated and that emotional mastery is taking root. 10. Spiritual growth and soul alignment. Finally, healing the mirror wound is reflected in spiritual growth and alignment with your soul purpose. Twin flame connections are inherently spiritual, and the mirror wound serves as a catalyst for awakening. Indicators of spiritual integration include heightened awareness of soul-level lessons and patterns, greater intuition and clarity regarding life purpose and personal growth, experiencing love that transcends fear, neediness, and dependency, love rooted in wholeness, authenticity, and conscious presence. At this stage, the twin flame relationship shifts from a mirror of pain to a mirror of wholeness, reflecting the deepest aspects of your soul's evolution. Healing the mirror wound is an ongoing journey, marked by subtle shifts, deep insights, and profound transformations. Recognizing the signs of progress, reduced emotional intensity, increased self-awareness, emotional independence, healthy boundaries, diminished projection, integration of past patterns, compassion, acceptance, resilience, and spiritual growth empowers you to stay committed and conscious on this challenging but rewarding path. Each step forward, no matter how small, is evidence that the mirror wound is not only being healed but integrated into the core of your being. The twin flame connection, once a source of emotional turbulence, becomes a portal for spiritual awakening, self-mastery, and authentic love. By observing these signs, you affirm that the journey is meaningful, the pain is purposeful, and every activation of the core wound is a sacred invitation to awaken, heal, and expand into the highest version of yourself. Now that we have explored the signs of successfully healing the mirror wound, it's time to dive into practical exercises that can accelerate the process of integration. Understanding the mirror wound intellectually is important, but true transformation requires active engagement, conscious reflection, and embodied practices. These exercises are designed to help you navigate triggers, process core wounds, and cultivate emotional, mental, and energetic resilience. Healing the mirror wound is an ongoing journey. No single exercise alone will solve everything, but consistent, conscious practice can create profound shifts in your emotional and spiritual landscape. Here are detailed, actionable techniques to support your twin flame journey. 1. Journaling to identify and process core wounds. Journaling is one of the most powerful tools for mirror wound healing because it allows you to externalize inner experiences and gain clarity on patterns. How to practice. Set aside 15 to 30 minutes daily in a quiet space. Begin by writing about any emotional triggers or intense reactions experienced that day, especially those involving your twin flame. Ask yourself reflective questions. What triggered me in this situation? Which core wound does this relate to? What fear, belief, or unresolved trauma is being reflected? Write freely without censorship or judgment. Allow emotions, thoughts, and memories to flow onto the page. Benefits. Helps identify recurring patterns and hidden emotional imprints. Creates a safe space to process emotions without projection. Strengthens self-awareness and insight into core wounds. 2. Inner child visualization. Inner child work addresses the root of most core wounds, often originating in childhood. Visualizing and nurturing your younger self can release long-held emotional trauma. How to practice? Sit or lie in a comfortable, quiet space. Close your eyes and take several deep breaths. Visualize your younger self at the age when the core wound likely formed. Observe their expression, posture, and emotional state. Imagine approaching your inner child, offering love, protection, and reassurance. Speak gently. You are safe. You are worthy. You are loved just as you are. Spend several minutes embracing or holding your inner child in your imagination, imagining their tension and fear dissolving. Benefits: heals emotional imprints stored in the subconscious, provides the nurturing experience that may have been absent in childhood, strengthens self-love and self-validation from a foundational level. 3. Conscious emotional release. Mirror wound activation often creates trapped emotional energy in the body. Releasing this energy consciously prevents emotional stagnation and helps integrate core wounds. Techniques include breathwork, deep, intentional breathing, inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, while focusing on areas of tension or emotional intensity. Movement and dance. Shake, stretch, or move your body freely to release emotional energy physically. Crying or vocal expression. Allow yourself to express grief, frustration, or anger without judgment. Benefits: frees suppressed emotions that reinforce the core wound, reduces intensity of triggers in real time, enhances mind-body connection and emotional resilience. 4. Mirror work for self-love. Mirror work is a practice designed to strengthen self-love and self-acceptance, directly counteracting core wounds of inadequacy, rejection, or unworthiness. How to practice? Stand in front of a mirror and make eye contact with yourself. Speak affirmations aloud. I am worthy of love and connection. I am enough exactly as I am. I honor my feelings and my journey. Repeat daily, especially when triggers arise or feelings of unworthiness surface. Benefits: rewires subconscious beliefs about self-worth, reduces dependency on external validation, reinforces emotional independence and conscious self-acceptance. 5. Mindfulness and presence practices. Mindfulness anchors you in the present moment, allowing conscious observation of triggers without reactive behavior. It is essential for reducing projection and cultivating clarity in twin flame interactions. Practices include meditation. Sit quietly, observe your breath, and notice thoughts and feelings without judgment. Body scans. Move attention slowly through your body, noticing tension or sensations associated with emotional triggers. Grounding exercises. Feel your feet on the floor, notice textures, or connect with nature to remain anchored during intense emotional moments. Benefits: enhances emotional regulation and stability, reduces the intensity of mirror wound activation, cultivates conscious awareness of core wounds in real time. 6. Shadow work exercises. Shadow work is the conscious exploration of the hidden or repressed parts of yourself, often illuminated through the mirror wound. How to practice? Identify recurring triggers, fears, or negative patterns in the twin flame connection. Ask yourself, what part of me am I avoiding or denying? Journal, reflect, or use visualization to confront these suppressed aspects. Integrate them by acknowledging, this is part of me. I accept and embrace it. Benefits: reveals unconscious core wounds influencing behavior, reduces projection onto the twin flame, facilitates integration of shadow aspects, fostering wholeness. 7. Energy clearing and chakra work. Because core wounds are often stored energetically, practices that balance or clear energy can accelerate healing. Techniques include chakra meditation. Focus on the heart, solar plexus, and root chakras, where emotional and core trauma often reside. Visualization. Imagine light cleansing and healing areas of tension or blocked energy. Sound therapy. Use singing bowls, mantras, or vocal toning to release emotional stagnation. Energy clearing rituals. Smudging with sage, using crystals, or practicing Reiki-style hands-on or self-healing. Benefits: releases emotional blockages that intensify the mirror wound, enhances the flow of energy and emotional resilience, supports the embodiment of healing at a physical and energetic level. 8. Conscious communication with your twin flame. Mirror wound healing is amplified through mindful communication. Once triggers surface, expressing feelings consciously instead of reacting unconsciously strengthens the connection and fosters mutual growth. How to practice. Pause before responding to emotional triggers. Identify your feelings and their root cause. Core wound activation. Use I statements. I feel anxious when I perceive distance, and I realize this is connected to my fear of abandonment. Listen actively to your twin flame without judgment or defensiveness. Benefits. Reduces cycles of conflict and misunderstanding. Encourages conscious co-creation of emotional safety. Supports shared healing and integration in the relationship. 9. Daily affirmations and intentions. Daily affirmations and intentions reinforce new patterns of thought, behavior, and emotional processing. By setting conscious intentions, you redirect your energy from old wounds toward empowerment and self-mastery. Examples. I release fear, embrace love, and honor my journey. I trust myself and my connection with my twin flame. I am healing, growing, and awakening every day. Benefits. Rewires subconscious thought patterns. Supports consistency in the healing journey. Enhances spiritual alignment and conscious manifestation of love. 10. Reflection and integration rituals. Finally, rituals of reflection and integration help consolidate healing. After each emotional activation or insight, take intentional steps to integrate the learning. Practices include journaling about lessons learned and how patterns are shifting, meditation or visualization to anchor insights and emotional growth, gratitude practices, acknowledging personal progress, twin flame growth, and the journey itself, creating symbolic acts of release, such as writing and burning old limiting beliefs or emotional pain. Benefits. Reinforces conscious awareness and emotional mastery, supports long-term integration of core wounds, honors the sacred nature of the twin flame journey and the mirror wound process. Healing the mirror wound is an active, multi-layered process that combines self-reflection, emotional release, inner child work, mindfulness, shadow work, energy balancing, conscious communication, affirmations, and integration rituals. These exercises provide practical tools to navigate the intensity of the twin flame journey, transform core wounds, and awaken to deeper levels of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and spiritual growth. By consistently applying these practices, the mirror wound evolves from a source of suffering into a gateway for profound personal transformation. The twin flame connection, once a mirror of pain, becomes a mirror of wholeness, reflecting not only your core wounds but also your capacity for self-love, resilience, and authentic connection. Healing is not linear, but each conscious step, each emotional release, and each reflective practice draws you closer to integration, inner peace, and the highest expression of your soul. Healing the mirror wound is an intensely transformative process, but it is not without its challenges and pitfalls. Many twin flame seekers encounter moments of frustration, confusion, or stagnation, often questioning whether progress is being made. Understanding these common obstacles and learning strategies to navigate them is essential for maintaining momentum on the journey of self-discovery, emotional mastery, and spiritual growth. Part 9 explores the most prevalent difficulties in healing the mirror wound, why they occur, and how to approach them consciously, turning potential setbacks into opportunities for deeper insight and integration. 1. Resistance to facing the core wound. One of the first and most common challenges is resistance to confronting the core wound. The mirror wound often triggers feelings, memories, or beliefs that are uncomfortable or painful. Fear of experiencing vulnerability, shame, or past trauma can make it tempting to avoid triggers or deny their existence. Manifestations include ignoring or suppressing emotional triggers, rationalizing or blaming the twin flame for emotional intensity, avoiding introspection and reflection. How to navigate. Recognize resistance as a natural protective mechanism. It signals that the wound exists and needs attention. Approach triggers gradually, using grounding and mindfulness practices. Remind yourself that healing occurs not by avoidance, but by conscious engagement with the emotional material. Resistance is often the soul's way of preparing you for deeper work. By leaning into discomfort with compassion, the healing process gains momentum. 2. Emotional overwhelm and burnout. The twin flame connection can intensify emotional experiences, leading to overwhelm or burnout. When mirror wounds are repeatedly activated without conscious processing, emotions can accumulate, creating stress, anxiety, or fatigue. Signs of emotional overwhelm include feeling mentally or physically exhausted after interactions with your twin flame, experiencing mood swings or heightened sensitivity, difficulty distinguishing between current events and past core wounds. Strategies to manage overwhelm. Implement regular emotional release practices such as breathwork, journaling, or movement. Schedule breaks and alone time to restore balance. Prioritize sleep, nutrition, and self-care to strengthen resilience. Practice mindfulness to stay grounded during triggers. By pacing yourself and integrating restorative practices, emotional intensity becomes manageable rather than overwhelming. 3. Projection and misinterpretation. Projection occurs when unresolved core wounds are unconsciously attributed to the twin flame. This can lead to misinterpretation of intentions, actions, or words, perpetuating cycles of misunderstanding and conflict. Common examples: interpreting neutral behavior as rejection or abandonment. Assuming your twin flame's independence signals disinterest or lack of love. Reacting to past wounds rather than present reality. How to reduce projection. Pause before reacting and ask yourself, is this about me or them? Identify the core wound being activated and observe its influence on perception. Maintain open, conscious communication with your twin flame, sharing feelings without blame. Reducing projection allows the mirror wound to surface for conscious processing rather than fueling destructive cycles. 4. Impatience with the healing process. Healing core wounds is rarely instantaneous. Impatience is a common pitfall, often triggered by the desire for immediate resolution or reunion in the twin flame dynamic. Signs of impatience include expecting triggers to disappear overnight, frustration or discouragement when patterns repeat, skipping exercises or practices because progress feels slow. Strategies to cultivate patience. Recognize that spiritual and emotional integration unfolds gradually. Celebrate small wins and subtle shifts in perception, behavior, or emotional regulation. Set realistic expectations, understanding that cycles of activation are part of the process. Patience is essential. The mirror wound requires consistent attention and reflection over time for deep healing. 5. Over-identification with the wound. Another challenge is over-identifying with the core wound. Sometimes individuals may see themselves primarily as the abandoned one, unlovable, or not enough, allowing the wound to dominate self-perception. Consequences include emotional reactivity becomes habitual, reinforcing patterns of suffering. Self-worth and identity become entangled with unresolved trauma. Progress is hindered because growth is overshadowed by self-labeling. How to shift perspective. Practice self-affirmation and mirror work to reinforce intrinsic worth. Focus on observing the wound as a part of you, not the entirety of you. Remember that the twin flame journey is a vehicle for self-mastery, not a permanent state of deficiency. Recognizing the wound as a dynamic, healable aspect of self, rather than a defining identity, is transformative for emotional liberation. 6. Dependency and codependency. Mirror wounds often foster dependency or codependency in twin flame relationships. The core wound's activation can make you seek validation, love, or security from your twin flame, creating imbalance. Signs of codependency include fear-driven need for constant reassurance, compromising personal boundaries to maintain closeness, feeling incomplete without the twin flame's attention or presence. Strategies to cultivate independence. Strengthen emotional self-regulation through mindfulness, journaling, and inner child work. Set and maintain healthy boundaries. Focus on personal growth, passions, and self-care outside the relationship. Developing emotional independence allows the mirror wound to heal, while maintaining conscious connection with the twin flame. 7. Misunderstanding the push-pull dynamics. Twin flame relationships often involve push-pull cycles, which can be confusing and discouraging. Misinterpreting these cycles may amplify the mirror wound rather than facilitate healing. Common pitfalls. Believing separation signifies failure or rejection. allowing emotional intensity to escalate without conscious reflection, expecting permanent closeness without honoring growth cycles. Strategies for clarity. Observe push-pull dynamics as natural expressions of individual growth and wound activation. Reflect on personal triggers rather than assigning blame. Embrace periods of space as opportunities for inner healing and alignment. Understanding the cycles as part of the soul journey fosters conscious engagement and reduces emotional turbulence. 8. Fear of vulnerability. Healing the mirror wound requires radical vulnerability, but fear often inhibits authentic expression. Many individuals hesitate to confront or share deep emotional truths, fearing judgment, rejection, or further pain. Indicators of resistance to vulnerability. Avoiding emotional conversations with your twin flame. Suppressing feelings to maintain control or protect the ego. Preferring surface-level interactions rather than authentic emotional exchange. How to cultivate courage. Practice vulnerability gradually, starting with self-reflection and journaling. Share insights or feelings in a calm, conscious manner. Remind yourself that vulnerability is a gateway to intimacy, growth, and authentic connection. Embracing vulnerability allows the mirror wound to surface safely and accelerates conscious healing. 9. Overemphasis on the twin flame for healing. A common pitfall is relying on the twin flame to heal the mirror wound. While the twin flame acts as a mirror, the responsibility for emotional and spiritual growth ultimately lies within you. Signs of over-reliance. Expecting the twin flame to fix emotional pain or reassure worthiness. Feeling stuck when the twin flame does not act as hoped. Confusing personal healing with relational dynamics. Strategies for autonomy. Commit to personal growth and inner work independent of the relationship. Use triggers as invitations for self-reflection rather than dependency. Recognize the twin flame as a guide, not a source of completion. True healing occurs when core wounds are addressed internally, transforming the twin flame connection into a conscious, balanced partnership. 10. Discouragement from repeated triggers. Even with dedicated work, triggers can recur, causing discouragement. It is important to recognize that repetition is part of the integration process. Each activation is an opportunity to practice emotional regulation, self-awareness, and healing. Strategies to overcome discouragement. Maintain a journal of progress and insights gained from each trigger. Celebrate subtle shifts and emotional growth. Reinforce self-love, mindfulness, and boundary practices to navigate repeated activations with grace. Persistence, reflection, and self-compassion transform recurring triggers into stepping stones for soul growth. The journey of healing the mirror wound is deeply transformative, but fraught with challenges and pitfalls. Resistance, overwhelm, projection, impatience, over-identification with the wound, dependency, fear of vulnerability, reliance on the twin flame, and discouragement are all natural obstacles. By approaching these challenges consciously, through awareness, emotional release, mindfulness, self-love, boundaries, and reflection, you can navigate them with grace and maintain steady progress. Every challenge is an invitation to deepen self-awareness, integrate the core wound, and align with your highest self. The twin flame connection, when approached with conscious intention, becomes not just a mirror of past pain, but a catalyst for profound personal transformation and spiritual awakening. By learning to navigate these pitfalls, you strengthen your capacity for resilience, love, and authenticity, ultimately allowing the mirror wound to transform into a pathway toward freedom, wholeness, and conscious connection. As we reach the final part of this series, it is time to explore the profound transformational power of the mirror wound within the twin flame journey. While the mirror wound initially appears as a source of pain, emotional turbulence, and unresolved trauma, it is ultimately a catalyst for spiritual awakening, self-mastery, and authentic love. When engaged consciously and healed with care, the mirror wound does more than reveal vulnerabilities. It illuminates the path toward wholeness, empowerment, and divine alignment. This part examines how fully embracing and integrating the mirror wound transforms not only your relationship with your twin flame, but also your relationship with yourself, your purpose, and the world around you. 1. Turning pain into conscious awareness. The mirror wound reflects the core wounds buried deep within the psyche. Feelings of abandonment, rejection, inadequacy, or unworthiness. While encountering these wounds can feel devastating, they are ultimately teachers. Transformational aspects. Pain acts as a magnifying lens, showing exactly where healing is needed. Each trigger creates an opportunity to cultivate awareness rather than avoidance. Emotional intensity forces you to confront hidden fears and limiting beliefs, illuminating pathways previously unseen. By turning pain into conscious awareness, the mirror wound shifts from a source of suffering to a gateway for self-knowledge and empowerment. 2. Accelerated spiritual growth. The twin flame connection is unique because it accelerates spiritual evolution. The mirror wound serves as a catalyst for this rapid growth by pushing you to confront inner shadows and unresolved trauma. Transformational outcomes include heightened intuition and inner guidance as emotional clarity increases, deeper understanding of universal truths, such as the interconnectedness of love, fear, and healing, enhanced spiritual practices, including meditation, mindfulness, energy work, and self-reflection. The intense activation of core wounds in a twin flame connection, when processed consciously, compresses spiritual lessons that might otherwise take decades to learn. 3. Cultivating unconditional self-love. One of the most profound transformations resulting from healing the mirror wound is the cultivation of unconditional self-love. By confronting feelings of inadequacy, unworthiness, or rejection, and responding with compassion and validation, you establish a foundation of love that is independent of external sources. Key markers of transformation. Embracing all aspects of yourself, including perceived flaws, triggers, and shadows. No longer seeking validation exclusively from your twin flame or others. Experiencing inner fulfillment, peace, and security regardless of external circumstances. Self-love transforms the mirror wound from a mirror of pain into a mirror of your intrinsic value and wholeness. 4. Transforming relationship dynamics. The mirror wound does not exist in isolation. It directly impacts how you interact with your twin flame. Healing this wound allows for a shift from reactive patterns to conscious co-creation. Transformational dynamics include replacing jealousy, fear, and insecurity with empathy, understanding, and compassion. Communicating from a place of presence rather than past pain. Honoring the individuality and growth path of your twin flame while maintaining authentic connection. The mirror wound, when integrated, transforms the relationship into a safe, conscious, and loving space where both partners grow spiritually and emotionally. 5. Integration of shadow aspects. Mirror wound healing is deeply connected to shadow integration. By facing fears, suppressed desires, and emotional imprints, you unify fragmented parts of the self. Transformational outcomes. Recognition that every shadow aspect holds valuable lessons about fear, survival, and resilience. Dissolution of patterns of projection, blame, and reactive behavior. Emergence of authenticity, confidence, and clarity in personal and relational contexts. Integrating shadow aspects through the mirror wound allows you to embody a holistic, empowered self, capable of conscious love and deep compassion. 6. Awakening emotional intelligence. The mirror wound also accelerates the development of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence involves recognizing, understanding, and managing both your own emotions and those of others, a skill essential in twin flame dynamics. Transformational outcomes. Ability to identify triggers before they escalate into conflict. Responding with empathy rather than reactivity. Using emotional experiences as tools for reflection and growth, rather than as obstacles. As emotional intelligence strengthens, the mirror wound evolves from a source of chaos into a training ground for mastery, resilience, and conscious relational engagement. 7. Deepening spiritual connection. Healing the mirror wound fosters a deeper connection to your spiritual self and the divine. The journey through the wound reveals that love is not merely a transactional or conditional experience. It is a sacred, energetic, and expansive force. Indicators of transformation. Experiencing synchronicities and intuitive guidance more frequently. Recognizing that pain, love, and challenges are interconnected aspects of spiritual growth. Developing compassion, forgiveness, and detachment as natural expressions of awakened consciousness. The mirror wound, fully integrated, becomes a portal for spiritual enlightenment and alignment with your highest self. 8. Liberation from fear and attachment. Core wounds often generate fear, attachment, and codependency. Healing these wounds facilitates freedom from fear-driven patterns. Transformational outcomes. Letting go of the need to control, manipulate, or cling to outcomes. Experiencing trust in yourself, your twin flame, and the flow of life. Accepting impermanence, uncertainty, and cycles of growth as natural aspects of existence. This liberation allows love to flow freely and authentically, unburdened by fear, anxiety, or unresolved trauma. 9. Creating a conscious love vibration. When the mirror wound is healed, it elevates your energetic vibration, creating a conscious and magnetic field of love. Twin flame connections are energetic at their core. Healing your mirror wound aligns your frequency with wholeness, authenticity, and unconditional love. Transformational expressions include attracting relationships and interactions that reflect conscious alignment rather than past trauma. Engaging with your twin flame from a space of mutual respect, understanding, and support. Experiencing love as a harmonious, expansive, and transformative energy rather than a source of pain or fear. The mirror wound, when integrated, amplifies your capacity to give and receive love consciously, transforming relational dynamics at the energetic level. 10. Manifesting soul purpose and life alignment. Finally, the ultimate transformational power of the mirror wound is its capacity to unlock soul purpose and alignment. Twin flame journeys are not solely about romantic connection. They are deeply entwined with your soul's evolution and life mission. Transformational outcomes. Greater clarity on personal goals, passions, and life direction. Alignment between emotional, mental, and spiritual priorities. Embodying a life that reflects authenticity, conscious choice, and spiritual growth. By fully embracing and integrating the mirror wound, you transform not only your inner world, but also the entire trajectory of your life, creating alignment, purpose, and fulfillment. The mirror wound is simultaneously a mirror of pain and a gateway to profound transformation. While it may initially provoke fear, triggers, and emotional intensity, the conscious engagement with this wound catalyzes accelerated spiritual growth, emotional mastery, self-love, shadow integration, and conscious relational connection. Fully healed mirror wounds allow you to experience emotional independence and self-validation, conscious, authentic love with your twin flame, liberation from fear, attachment, and unconscious patterns, deep spiritual connection, intuition, and alignment with soul purpose. An empowered, holistic expression of the self in the world. Ultimately, the mirror wound is not something to be feared. It is a sacred invitation. It calls you to step into your wholeness, embrace vulnerability, and evolve into the highest version of yourself. Each activation, each reflection, and each moment of conscious engagement is an opportunity to transform pain into wisdom, fear into love, and separation into unity. If this series has helped illuminate your journey with twin flames and the mirror wound, take a moment to reflect on the signs of your own healing. Begin or deepen your journaling, inner child work, or mindfulness practices today. Share your experiences, insights, or breakthroughs in the comments to create a conscious, supportive community. Remember, your mirror wound is not a limitation. It is a portal to your highest potential. Embrace it, integrate it, and watch as your life and relationships transform in ways you never thought possible.